Welcome to the How Did They Do It Real Estate Podcast. Have you ever wondered how people succeed in real estate and what steps they took to get there? If so, this podcast is for you. Your hosts, Sayla and Eileen Prack, interview top experts in the real estate community to share with you their real estate journey and how they achieved massive success. Our goal is to provide you with valuable real estate resources and to help you apply it to your own real estate goal. Welcome to today's episode of the How Did They Do It Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Eileen Prack. And today we've brought on James Nelson as our guest, and he is a principal and head of Avison Young's Tri-State Investment Sales Group, where he leads a group of 36 professionals in the sale of multifamily office development and retail properties throughout the country. And since its inception in 2018, his sales team has closed over 50 sales valued at well over $1 billion, resulting in his being named one of Avison Young's top sales professionals, as well as being on Commercial Observer's Power 100 list and being named a CoStar Power Broker. He's also the co-founder of the Real Estate Services Alliance and the Colgate Real Estate Council. And so, James, welcome to the show. It's an honor to have you on here today. Welcome, and how are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing great, and so happy to be here with your audience. I think what your show is doing is such a tremendous service for investors out there, aspiring investors particularly, who are looking to get into the game and benefit from all the wonderful things that real estate provides for us. I'm really excited for our conversation today.
Likewise, James. No, thank you. I appreciate you coming on and spending a little time here with us. But if you can give our listeners a little bit more background and insight into who you are and how you got started in this game of real estate.
Great. Well, it was truly luck that got me into the business. I've been doing this now for 25 years. So as you mentioned, I graduated from Colgate. And at the time, my senior year, all my friends had investment banking jobs. So I was looking for opportunities. And at the Career Service Center, there was a posting for a job to become a real estate broker associate. And I applied. I later found out there was only 2 people who applied for the job, and I was their second choice. So fortunately, they took both of us. And I still joke with the founders of that company that their first pick, he left shortly thereafter. And then, I ended up staying with them for 17 years, was a partner there. We ended up selling our company about 8 years ago to Cushman & Wakefield. I had 3 great years there. And then I got a tremendous opportunity by Avison Young to build out their investment sales team in New York City. And so, yes, I'm an investment sales broker, as you mentioned, but my passion is really about investing and teaching others how to gain the advantage to outperform the market. And that's what my upcoming book is all about, as well as the name of my podcast, which is The Insider's Edge to Real Estate Investing.
When you first got started back 25 years ago as starting out as a broker associate and then moving your way up to partner, at such a young age, like what did you see in the real estate environment that continued to, allowed you to stay in that company for 17 years and then move forward and then continue to build up within real estate?
So I've got to give a lot of credit to the founders, Paul Massey and Bob Knackel of Massey Knackel, for this business plan that they had envisioned, and they really found this great niche in the market. So the firm specialized in the sale, representing owners in the sale of investment properties, but we did this with a territory system. So we took New York City, we divided up into territories, and then your job would be to cover that area and learn everything there was to know about it. And we were focusing on the small to mid-sized properties, so typically below $20 million. So what we found was a lot of the big global publicly traded brokerage firms, they were focusing on the glass and steel, as we call it, the big office properties. But meanwhile, 95% of the sales in New York and in most markets are, below that threshold. And so by really focusing in on these neighborhoods, we were able to provide a real service. And I learned at a very, early time in the business that your knowledge, your expertise can really help give you the advantage. So I even found that, with being a year or 2 in the business, because I focused on a neighborhood and really understood everything about it, that I was able to excel and even, bring on some listings that maybe some of the longer term brokers in the market might not have had exposure to.
So I want to jump right in because Your book that you're releasing now and your podcast, The Insider's Edge to Real Estate Investing. What is the insider edge? How do you even gain that? Because right now within real estate, it seems like everybody's trying to get into the market. Everybody's trying to do something within real estate. But what is it about it that gives people a little bit more of an edge, sets them apart from everybody else?
Great question. And, first of all, just to kind of give the impetus on why I wrote the book, and this came out of my podcast and a lot of the lessons that I've taught. I've been an adjunct professor at Columbia, NYU, Wharton. And what I found time and time again is that there really is no book. There's no resource that teaches people how to invest in commercial real estate, really from start to finish. There's great resources out there that show you maybe one piece of the transaction or how to underwrite, but really wanted to give a guide that anyone could read, whether they're just starting out in the business or if they're a seasoned pro and they're looking for strategies on how to up their game. So again, what I really want to do is give a practical guide. And, the reason why I entitled it The Insider's Edge is I really do believe that real estate is an insider's game, meaning that you can gain the advantage. And one of those ways is in that example I just gave you, becoming an expert, becoming very knowledgeable in a specific area or business plan. And you will find that if you focus your time, that you're going to be able to see opportunities that maybe a generalist who isn't really watching what's going on can find. But I've also found that unlike the stock market where everybody has the same access to the same information, everybody can see where a stock is trading at any minute of the day, there's a lot of inefficiencies in the real estate market. And that's what makes the asset class so exciting to me, that you can find opportunities that maybe they weren't widely promoted. You can buy off-market properties at well below what they should have sold for. And if you have the skill set and you know how to reposition an asset to achieve its highest and best value, that you can really outperform the market, regardless if you're, buying, at the height of the market or during challenging times as well.
You mentioned that you've also taught as an adjunct professor across very prestigious schools across Wharton, NYU. One thing I'm kind of curious also is commercial real estate and just real estate in general, they're not really widely taught. And you don't really find those types of classes in those different types of schools and everything like that. When you bring this type and this new way of thinking and this type of investing within real estate to these schools, how has the response been? And when it's being taught, how do the students react and what do they take from it?
So in fairness, we have yet to roll this book out into all the classrooms in a widespread manner because the book does not release until January. That being said, I've already shared a couple advanced copies as well as some of the lessons learned. And I actually had a group of master's students in my office yesterday from Fordham University and took them through the whole premise of the book. And it was incredibly well received because they said, look, James, we've learned various parts of what you're talking about in the book, but what you have done is really shown the full arc of the transaction. And you've really showed us step by step from the very beginning. As far as what kind of assets should you buy? What are the advantages of buying multifamily over retail, over office? Should you consider development if you've never done this before? Then talking about building the right team. Who do you need on the team? An investment sale broker, a very specialized attorney, a mortgage broker. And I go through each person you need on the team, how to find a great partner. And so I think they really appreciated that the teachings of this book, again, kind of give you the full picture and can really act as a great primer to then really focus in. Because I think if you're like me, Eileen, that you probably learned by doing this and by having mentors and those around. And that's certainly how I learned. When I started in the business 25 years ago, no one handed me a book and said, hey, James, here's the guidebook. This is what you do. I mean, we're fortunate today to have incredible podcasts like yours that teach people how to do this. So, but I'm really hoping that this book will be a great foundation for anyone, again, looking to get into this business or step up their game.
When someone is looking to get into the real estate game, looking to start to build it out, and what you talked about was getting focused and becoming an expert in a certain market and niche, what is the first thing that you typically have to do in order to start building that expertise in that area?
It's a great question. I think you first have to assess what your own strengths are, your skills, and the time that you're willing to devote to this. Now, in addition to being an investment sales broker, I have been a limited partner in dozens and dozens of transactions. I've also raised two funds to go out and put out JV equity for value add deals. But I know what you do, and I know you reposition multifamilies, and that's a lot of hands-on work, right? So you need to really assess, do you have the time to devote to operating real estate? One of the things I cover in the book is multifamily is very time intensive. Of course, you can get a third party manager who can help out, but there's no substitute as you, the asset manager, right? So, on one end of the spectrum, yes, you can own and operate multifamily. On the other end, you could just buy triple net lease properties, your CVSs, your Walgreens, if you want to, clip a coupon. So I think that's really the first part, is to really think about, what time do you have to devote to this? What are your strengths, right? And then think about where you have familiarity. I have, friends who are architects who say, look, I love repositioning a building. I like the whole, the visualizing what can be done there. I've had friends who are in retail who say, look, I want to get into the business because I understand this. I understand how to, what's needed for a retail space. So really understanding kind of what your strengths are. And then I think you have to pick a neighborhood that you know. And I have a lot of friends who've been doing this for a long time, and sure, they end up investing all across the country. But I think for your first investment, I would encourage your listeners to start in their own backyard. You're going to know that neighborhood better than anyone else. You can go and know, okay, this is where you want to be. These are the types of, this is the type of product that the tenant base is going to be looking for. And look, if you want to go explore a new market to invest in, there's no substitute for pounding the pavement. You need to go out there. You need to go walk the product. You need to see what apartments are renting for, what new retailers are coming to the area. And sure, you can do a lot of this research online, but I still believe that real estate is very much an in-person business, and there's no substitute for really walking and seeing what's out there.
One of the things also is, when people are starting to look at real estate, or even when you bring it to the students and bring it to, the different schools and everything like that. Also, it's comparison against what real estate can do in the market versus what they can achieve and what they're looking at a typical stock industry and the stock market as well. When you do that comparison, what are some of the major advantages that people are able to gain through real estate versus what they can see in a typical stock market?
Yeah. So, I think it's a great question. And the first thing is just control, right? So being kind of the master of your destiny. So when you own the property, you are the CEO, you are the decision maker for that property, as opposed to being kind of at the whims of some corporation. And having that inside information, that knowledge, right? So you can really do the research to understand what's going on. I think also, and I alluded to this before, being able to improve a property. You might be able to buy in at a 5 or 6% return, but by doing the proper renovations, and that's really studying your market and knowing what's in demand, it might be taking a large, oversized 1-bedroom and turning it into a 2-bedroom to generate more income. And what I found is that typically that value add business plan where you can go in and improve the property, that's a better recipe for success because you have that upside potential. And that's an exciting thing that you can create. And again, it's within your control as opposed to just really being at the whims of what a corporation decides to do.
With the market that we're seeing right now within real estate and the volatility of, we're seeing interest rates rising. There's a lot of talks about what the environment's going to look like. Is there going to be a potential downturn? Are we going to go into recession? What do you think that the current market is going to look like? And is it still a good time for people to start building up that education base, start to get involved within real estate? Or is it a good time better to right now to kind of sit on the sidelines and, just kind of wait it out and see what's going on?
Sure. So first of all, I believe there's always a good time to invest in real estate if you find the right opportunity. And one thing I talk about in my book is the most important thing to look for is seller's motivation. You'd be surprised as a broker how rarely I'm asked, James, why is the owner selling? But if you find a motivated seller, whether you're in a peak market or you're at a trough, that's where a lot of these opportunities are. And I'll just give you a very quick story. Right before COVID, we were working on a 72-unit apartment building with a restaurant in the heart of Greenwich Village. And we had a contract out at $32 million right before COVID hit. Fast forward a couple months later, we didn't know if it was the end of the world. We didn't know how long this was going to take. I'm representing an estate that needed to sell. And they said, James, we can't wait. We need to sell. We ended up selling that property for $22 million 60 days later. So the reason why I tell the story is if I was dealing with a long-term owner, discretionary seller, most would just say, look, let's wait. But that estate, they had to do something, and they took a $10 million discount in 60 days, right? So if you had been that buyer watching that situation and knowing that they needed to do something and have the courage to invest when they did, it would have been, because now that property is worth well over double. So on my podcast, I've been able to interview some legends in the business, a couple billionaires in particular, and Don Peebles, who is a very prominent developer, both in your market in LA as well as in New York and Miami. He said that all the best purchases he has ever made is in these uncertain times. So yeah, there's a lot of question marks. What's going to happen with these increased interest rates, inflation? It will create distress, but I also believe where there's challenge, there's opportunity.
Is there, since you're in the broker's market as well, you've sat on both sides of the field as an investor yourself and also as a broker, has there been a disconnect between what the expectations are from the seller standpoint versus the buyer standpoint? And do you think that bridge or that gap will start to close up anytime soon?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think brokers, especially in markets like these, we really need to help educate our clients. And yes, I talk in the book about, the benefits of finding a property off market. If a seller sells direct, they don't use a broker. Yes, then you're not competing with the whole world. But I think brokers can serve a purpose. Sometimes a seller needs to be educated. And we have one large portfolio sale that we're working on right now in New York. And our original guidance before rates started going up was 105 million. And now we're looking at transacting in the low to mid 80 range. And I think if we brought 24 offers to the table, I'm not sure if our clients would have, been willing to make that adjustment. So I do think that as the broker, our job is to educate the sellers. The best way to do that is to show them offers on the table, and then they can, you can lay that out for them and help the client make the best decision possible.
In your book, The Insider's Edge, what is the main takeaway? Or if you're already in the game, if you're already in real estate, how do you tweak it so that you can up your level, you can scale up to that next level?
Yeah. So above all, it's really the people in this business that I think is who are going to help you become successful. One of the first interviews I ever did was Bruce Ratner, another legendary developer in New York. And I interviewed him, and he used the word people over 50 times in a 1-hour interview. And I kept asking him, what was the key to your success? What did you do? And he said, no, it was the people. It was the team. It was the people around me. So I really do believe whether it's having a great partner, having a great team, a great broker, a great attorney, the people that you surround yourself with, they are the ones who are going to help you unlock these opportunities and then capitalize on them. So, and with that in mind, it's really about having the right reputation in the market, always doing the right thing, because also you shouldn't be looking to get into this business as just saying, hey, I'm going to take advantage of the first situation that comes along. No, your reputation is everything in this business. So you want to do things right. You want to be honorable. You don't want to just throw offers out there and then retrade after. You want to stand by your offers, unless of obviously something that comes up that's a surprise for everybody. But you want to be that first phone call. You want to have that reputation that you perform, you do what you say. And that's when you're going to start getting more and more of those phone calls to say, hey, I got this great opportunity. I've got a situation. You have to move quickly. I know I can count on you.
Are you seeing more people holding on to their properties a little bit longer, kind of wait out the market and evaluating the situations? And are you looking, is it more of like a buyer's market or a seller's market at this point in time?
Well, that's really dependent on what city that you're in. In New York, it's always a seller's market with the respect that there's only about between 500 and 1,000 properties that trade every year. And I'm talking about above 5 million all asset classes. So we're always going to have dozens of buyers for every single property that sells. That being said, if you're talking about, what direction is pricing going, there is no doubt that there's downward pressure in pricing, whether you're a 3.5 cap market or a 5 cap market, if now you're borrowing money, 5.5, 6%. What we found is that a lot of buyers today are not looking to take on negative leverage. They want to be neutral at least. So yes, that is going to put downward pressure on pricing. I think also what's happening right now when the markets move very quickly like this, that this interest rate increases have been unprecedented with how quickly and how dramatically that they've increased. And as a result, what that does is it sends a lot of buyers to the sidelines. And so, I would say, if I really should poll our investor base, but if I had to guess, I would say over 3/4 of the buyers right now are on the sidelines. And what they're saying is, if I wait, there's going to be better deals out there in 6 months. Now, they might be right, but there also is going to be a lot more competition, right? And if you subscribe to the Warren Buffett, theory of investing, being greedy when others are fearful, be fearful when others are greedy. Right now, there's not a lot of competition. If you're out there looking to buy, you will find those sellers. Think back, sellers' motivation. They are going to sell today with who is ever out there looking. So I would stay vigilant. I would never, stop looking. Obviously, things are a lot more challenging, and you do have to factor in the increased borrowing costs. But yeah, I think I don't know if that answers your question, whether it's a buyer's or seller's market. But for the buyers out there, I would certainly be continuing to be active.
Typically, what has been the common motivation for the sellers, especially in today's market that you've seen? And then on the flip side, how do the buyers make themselves stand out to the sellers?
I'm loving these. These are great questions. Thank you. So again, sellers, as far as when you look at that kind of motivation, that scale and some of the criteria I mentioned, estate, it can also be partnership disputes, distress. Like those are the sellers that transact in, these times. You think back to like the financial crisis, 2009, 2010, owners who have to sell, right? So that's like on one extreme. As far as sellers who don't have to sell, the more discretionary ones. If you're ever bidding on a property and the broker comes back and says, well, the owner really doesn't need to sell. If they can get $20 million, they'll sell, but, they really don't have to do anything. That is like the biggest turnoff for any buyer, because it's like, you're basically telling me that you're not going to meet the market and you're not going to be reasonable, right? Now, there are sellers who don't have to sell, but they are motivated to sell. And maybe they want a 1031 exchange. Maybe they have a $5-10 million asset that they want to trade up to a $20 million asset. And even though they know they're not going to sell at last year's price, they feel that if they upsize their investment, they're going to benefit more on the buy. So you do get some of that, right? Now, again, that's usually falls more in the discretionary camp. As far as making yourself known as a buyer, track record is the most important thing. So your listeners are going to say, well, James, I'm just looking to start out. What do? I'm going to call you. I haven't bought anything. Maybe you don't have, $10 million sitting in the bank. Well, that's why in my book, I also talk about, for your first deal, find an experienced partner who does have a track record. Okay. What do you bring to the table? You bring to the table the deal. That is the most valuable thing you can do. You found this great opportunity. You vetted it. You've got the business plan. You are going to bring it to a trusted partner and say, look, I would love to participate with you. I would love to be your partner in this. Okay. And if your co-GP, general partner, help me close the deal, help me raise capital for it, help me finance it, and help me execute on this. And you are going to follow along and get that experience. Now, if you've done that a couple times successively, then you will have the ability to go out and do this on your own. But if you've never bought anything before, you don't have the track record, it is going to be very challenging for someone to take you seriously, unless if you are in that camp where you've got $10 million sitting in the bank and you say, hey, here's my proof of funds. I'm going to buy this and take my chances. But again, I would go the partner route, and I'm sure you'll certainly learn along the way as well.
It all goes back to the people thing that you're talking about. It's all about the people, people, people.
Absolutely.
And James, for you, what are you looking to focus on next with your book coming out and everything, your podcast? What's the next focus for you?
Wow. This book is, I put a lot of time and effort into this. And so right now I'm just basically sharing the lessons I've learned with it. I really love to see this get into the classrooms, whether it's the undergraduate programs, the master's programs. So I'm going to be spending the upcoming year just getting the word out. And I'm so appreciative for you having me on the show, just to kind of talk about what I'm doing, because it is a passion of mine to give back. As a broker, I have the benefit of seeing, thousands of transactions. I see what works. I see what doesn't work. I've been an investor myself, continue to invest. And so I just want to get the word out there. But as far as what's next, I obviously want to continue to focus on my brokerage business. We have a great team in New York. I really enjoy it. I'm learning something new every single day. But I also really want to step up my game in the investing portion. And again, I do that with partners myself, right? Because you can't do it all. Investing, if you're going to operate, is a full-time job. So it's finding the right partners so I can execute on the opportunities that are going to be out there over the next couple of years. And
you've been in the business for more than a quarter of a century, pretty much. And so out of everything that you've seen so far, what has been the biggest pitfall that you've seen newer investors trying to break into this space, or even current and experienced investors and real estate professionals coming into this space make as they're trying to expand their portfolio or even get started?
Yeah, I think overpromising and underdelivering. And that goes back to the whole reputation thing. I think sometimes newer investors say, hey, I have to kind of make myself into something that I'm not to try to get an opportunity. And then they get a shot and then they can't perform. I think you need to be ready. You need to have your team, set. You need to have your business plan. You need to be confident that you can execute, right? Because what you don't want to be known as someone who's just going out there, bidding, getting contracts, and then not performing. If you do that, even in a big city like New York, word gets around, right? And so you want to make sure that you're prepared. And if it is your first investment, don't hide it. Say, look, this is the first time I'm doing this, but I've got a great partner. We've got a business plan. This is what we're doing. We've got the capital raised. We'd love an opportunity and to work with you.
And James, how has real estate investing impacted your life?
Like I said, I just love that it's a business where every day you're learning something new. It's to me, it's so fascinating, and I get to work with all different kinds of people, families, businesses where, they were running a factory and now that the business is closed down, but now the real estate is worth many multiples of the business, dealing with private equity, the banks, foreign investors from all over the world, the big public REITs that are out there. And so it's fascinating to me, and learning about different business plans, different asset classes, and about various neighborhoods. It's just, I really enjoy it. I also really enjoy the team building aspect. So we've got a group of, close to 36 people, and just working with them and continuing to step up our own games every year.
And what is the one thing that you know about real estate that you wish you knew when you first started?
That there are great partners out there that you can ask to do business with. I remember very early on, I found an incredible opportunity. It was a 10-family in Chelsea that I could have bought for $400,000. At the time, I knew the property was probably worth $1.5 million, but I was so scared to reach out to anyone else to tell them about it because I thought I was going to lose the opportunity, that I just lost the deal. An investor came in and bought it. I then, as the broker, represented that investor, and we ended up selling it for $2 million. Fast forward, 10 years later, the property was probably worth $5 or $6 million. So, just remember that the idea of you've got this incredible opportunity and you don't want to bring in a partner. Well, getting a percentage of something is a lot better than getting 100% of nothing.
It's so interesting. It's so true, because especially within this space here, we talk a lot about, and we hear a lot about the abundance mindset versus a scarcity mindset. And if we think about and come and approach it from the abundance mindset, there's enough out there for everybody. And together as partners and groups and working with team buildings and everything like that, you can achieve so much more and then get to your goal much faster together.
I love that. And again, the fact that you're doing this podcast, you're an investor yourself, and you're putting this out there, right, to be helpful to others. And this isn't why we do it, that it's going to come back around, but you never know. I mean, someone might be listening to this show right now and say, hey, I've got a great opportunity that someone's going to bring to us, or maybe we can be helpful. And that's generally the way it works.
So what is the one thing that sets the successful people apart in real estate?
The one thing, I think it's reputation. I really do. I think your reputation and doing the right thing, there's no substitute for it, because if you don't, you really don't have anything else.
Absolutely. And James, where can our listeners find out more about you? Grab a copy of your book that will be released in 2023. Give us all the good details.
Thank you so much. So at jamesnelson.com, that's where you can find my podcast. It's where you can find my white papers, exclusive video series, and also pre-order my upcoming book, which is releasing in January with McGraw-Hill. And so, then the link will take you to Amazon or wherever you like to order your books. So just so appreciative to share with your audience what I've been up to. And I really hope that the book is going to help your listeners be the most successful investors possible.
Thank you so much, James. So grateful for your time today.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for listening to our podcast today, brought to you by Bonavest Capital. We would really appreciate it if you can go to iTunes right now and leave a rating and written review. Also, please don't forget to subscribe so you can always get the latest episodes. You can also connect with us on Facebook, How Did They Do It Real Estate. We'd love to hear your feedback and any topics that you're interested in for future episodes. Lastly, to learn more about us, you can go to bonavestcapital.com and fill out the Contact Us page so you can speak to us directly. Nothing on the show should be considered as specific personal advice. Please consult your legal, tax, and real estate professionals for individualized advice.